Amen. All right, I'm almost looking forward to this part more than the teaching because I'd like to hear your feedback because I think this is really powerful. And the notes will be up on the website with the teaching when it goes up, so you can just sort of see the bullet points of the the thought things, whatever the different areas are. All right, so this is the Afterburn. So if you have comments or questions about the teaching, what I shared today, Kurt's on the live stream desk, and David's got a microphone, and so does Frederick on the other side of the room. So you're welcome to raise your hands, and the mic will come around. Who wants to get us started? Okay, Billie Jean?
I wasn't going to share this, but since there's not too many people raising their hand, this is just something, a comment, and it's related to your... I'll tell you what happened to me. My husband and I have been married for 26 years, and when we got married, we neither one was doing anything except sinning. But anyway, when I came into Torah, he didn't like it. He wanted me to leave. He didn't even want me around. So I was going to leave, but he said that I could stay. So I did, and I'm still with him. But I've noticed over the years that he respects what I've been doing. He sees how it's working. The funny part about it is, I'm going to share with you, something happened last night. And he was watching the Braves game. And evidently they were losing. And he hollers at me and he says, "Billy, you need to pray for these Braves." I said, "I don't usually pray for things like that." But I thought, okay, to myself, I thought, well, Father, please help the Braves, And the Braves won the game 6-1. Huh? What about?
Now, of course, he was watching the game and not you.
Right.
But there's more, okay.
So I was telling Sue about it, and I told him. So this morning I heard him talking to a friend of his, which happens to be my ex-husband. And he said, "You know what, them Braves?" He said, "Billy prayed for him last night and they came through."
That's hysterical. Hey, look, even people in my parents' Jewish congregation, if there's somebody like going through a major thing and they're in a hospital or something like that, they ask her to tell me and for us to pray about it. Including the rabbi that we used to have there, his wife used to pray, or we'd ask for those kind of things. And so, I mean, they see the fruit. They don't want to make all the leaps that they need to make with it, but they can see some things. That's kind of a funny story. We appreciate that. By the way, just so we're clear, you should not be watching the Braves game on Shavuot. Now, I don't think Billy was probably watching the game, but her husband was, okay? Okay, so, and that's because he's not part of this and he's in his own world. But at least, look, but because of her walking this out with integrity, he has grown to respect and know that this is what she does, okay? And that's all I can encourage all of you to do with your family members is walk this out with integrity and as gently and inoffensively as possible without crossing the lines where you would have to lose integrity, okay? So if you do that, they will eventually figure out what you will and won't do and stop asking you to do things you shouldn't do. They'll figure it out, okay? Because they'll see that you're not going to budge. It's a waste of time. So when my family, which, believe it or not, my Jewish family who keeps nothing, when they might call me and say, we're going to go do this thing, and it'll be on Shabbat, and I'll say, it's Shabbat. And they go, oh. And they'll say, and there's no place to go after that. Okay? All I got to do is just remind them, oh, it's a holy day, or oh, it's this, and they'll be like, oh, okay, never mind. And so you can get them to that place. Be consistent, be firm, but maintain the fruit. Be gentle and meek and kind, etc. Okay? Instead of saying, what's wrong with you? Don't you know it's a holy day, you pagan sinner? That's kind of redundant, isn't it? You pagan sinner? Okay, never mind. Okay. So I guess a pagan sinner would be someone doing something right, because then they'd be sinning, being pagan. I don't know, whatever. Okay. The double negative turns into a positive or something. Didn't they teach you that in school? Okay. Who's next? Who's next? That's like when someone used to call me a stupid idiot. I said, okay, I'm brilliant. Because I'm really stupid at being an idiot. So I must be smart. David.
You mentioned the responsibility concerning leaders and teachers. And if you're going to teach somebody, you need to be aware of what the responsibility you're taking on yourself is. Well, when I came back from being in the Middle East at various times and going through all that, in my exuberance and everything else and everything I knew or thought I knew at the time, I was basically telling a friend of mine who was in a Messianic congregation. His walk was nowhere near remotely even where I was at the time, which is not the greatest, but, you know. And he took what I said and the stories I had told, and I wasn't necessarily trying to teach him per se, but he took that, went with it, went over to Israel, got himself into some trouble. The girlfriend he had at the time in Israel ended up getting an abortion and a whole bunch of other stuff that fell from that. And I, to a certain extent, he had his own responsibilities in that, but to a certain extent, I blame myself because he was trying in his own way to follow my lead. And I led him in a direction without, it was not the best. So be careful when you open your mouth to people about stuff. You never know how they're going to take it.
Let me tell you something, and thank you for sharing that, Dewey. Look, there's so many times when I will instruct somebody and I will be pleading with them to follow instruction. They won't. But the one time you say something that you're just sort of saying it in passing and it really isn't instruction, they'll take it and run with it. And so you don't know what people will do. So you need to always be concerned about your mouth. Or in our case nowadays, you're typing. Because we type more than we talk. Okay, but whatever you're putting onto social media, whatever texting, whatever you're doing, you know, be careful. People are also going to interpret it in ways that aren't necessarily the way you intended it. Anybody ever had that happen? Okay? And I say this over and over and over again. Communication is the hardest thing we do. For you to actually receive what I say exactly how I mean it is got a very small chance. That's why you have to repeat, use different examples to make sure that now in the abundance of what I said, maybe you'll get it. And that's the same thing you have with people you talk to. It's not just me to you. I'm not saying you're hard-headed or something. Just when we speak to each other, it's always going to go in through the air, into your ears, through the filters of your upbringing, your background, where you're at, your emotions, and everything else. And so you'll think I said things I didn't say. All right? And this happens so often. I spoke to one person the other day and said something. They spoke to another person. That person that spoke to me and said, well, so-and-so said you said this. That's not what I said. It's kind of what I said. It's partially what I said, but not what I said. All right? So and I thought it was something simple. You all have had this experience. So realize if you're now teaching, think about what they may do with what you just said. All right? And where they might take that. It's a very high responsibility role.
Okay, recently coming from Christianese, I used to always think that, things that went on in the Old Testament, God was just so cruel. And now I see it totally different. And when you were talking about the perception and what they were thinking and feeling and things like that, I thought to myself, how many of them were just confused? I mean, because I'm so confused.
Oh, sure,
and
there's a lot of it.
I just wonder how many got in trouble because they just didn't get it. So, just a thought.
Okay, well, to some degree, that's understandable. In other ways, it's not. It has to do with how quickly they're willing to submit to the authorities. The authorities are there to when you're listen now. When you're confused, that's what the structure is there to help fix. So if you go to the structure, the leadership in the structure, and say, I'm confused, now what you'll do, this is where you get in trouble, you'll talk to another confused person instead of talking to leadership. So you think, I know what I'll do. I really don't want to call Rabbi because, after all, he may say something I don't want to really do, and I'm not ready for it. So I'm going to call this person who's been in it just as long as me or less, and I'm going to ask them. Which is why I tell you, stop typing in suggestions, answers, and solving everybody's problems in the Facebook pages, etc. Let the leadership do it, okay? Because you're just going to be the blind leading the blind. You know where they end up. End up in a pit, right? We're trying to get you out of the pits, avoiding the pits and all those kind of problems, and you guys keep wanting to lead each other right into them. And so don't go to the person who's been doing this just 5 minutes more than you think they're so smart. Actually go to the leadership. Now, if you don't have, and I've said this 500 million times, if you don't have somebody, your job, your most urgent job is to find anointed, appointed leadership. And pray that Abba will lead you to genuinely anointed, appointed leadership. I'm not claiming I'm the one you must listen to. But if you do not have, you need to find. And it's urgent. Because you are going to be confused and make bad decisions and everything else without that. Oh, well, you know, blah, blah, blah. No. Look, stop thinking that somehow this is that. I just have to pray and the Ruach's going to give it to me. Because that's where all the mess is. Everybody thinking they're listening to the Ruach. That's why we have so much confusion. It's not the Ruach's fault. It's your thinking you're listening to the Ruach when there's other voices in there. The biggest one being you. Your preferences, your voice, that self-voice. But that self-voice is going to convince you it's the Ruach. And so you got to just realize you need somebody that's anointed and appointed. In other words, it's their role. It doesn't mean they're great and exalted or something. It's just their role. Look, there were anointed appointeds that made the tabernacle and did the dyeing of the cloths and did the forming of the metals and the smelting and all the other things. They had people who had those gifts. You need someone who has a gift in this to answer your confusion stuff. Some of you need life coaching. You need people with that kind of gift, which isn't necessarily this stuff specifically, but just because you're making life decisions that you don't know what you're doing. Handling your finances, handling your relationships, handling whatever, careers and stuff. Life decisions. And so we all need mentoring. We all need help. And that's clearly evident in Scripture. But you see, that puts you in a place where you need to be vulnerable and you need to find the ability to submit. Let's be clear again, because I think it's worth repeating what the definition of submission is. Submission is when you're under an authority that you've chosen to be under, and that authority is telling you to do something or not do something that you don't agree. Now you have an opportunity to submit. It doesn't come until you don't want to and don't agree, or you don't like it. It's agreement otherwise. It's not submission. Submission doesn't happen until I say, if you're with me, and I say, look, you really need to do this, and you don't want to or you don't agree. Well, now you got to do it if you're submitting. If you don't do it, you're not submitting. So now you got to decide, are you going to submit to authority or not? By the way, this happens with the Creator. The Creator says, you're not to work on Shabbat, but my boss is going to call me in. All right, are you going to submit or not? Well, you're going to submit to one or the other. Either Yahweh or your boss. Oh, but you don't understand. My cousin's daughters, my best friends, whatever, what is getting married on a Saturday. I have to go. Well, you're going to submit to them or submit to him? You don't want to do one or the other. Which one? Well, you're going to end up doing the one you want. Don't blame it on the pressure they're putting on you. You're going to do the one you want. I want to be here. More than, you can't tempt me with anything else. I don't think there's anything I could possibly rather do than be here. See, if you rather be at the wedding, then there's a problem inside here in your relationship with him. Your heart, your head, and him are not in line right. To love him above all things, with all your heart, mind, body, strength, etc., means that you would never prefer to be anywhere than where he is. And so that's where the confusion is. So it's a good point, Beverly. I'm sure there were very confused people there. But then those confused people, to succeed in getting out of their confusion, were to go to the leadership. All right, that's very important. Because that's where certainly we can run into those challenges. Look for those people whose role it is to help you out of confusion. By the way, some of you have experienced this. You know what? Go talk to some of the people who says, hey, have you tasted of the leadership? Have you gone to them about things? I mean, there are people here that you could absolutely talk to and say, this is my experience, okay? We got some over in this corner here, like 4 of them right there, all right? And they're scattered among the room. So you know who they are. Go talk to them. Any leadership, some of you are online watching this and you've got congregations you go to, or little groups that you can go to, whatever. Well, if you're online with me and you're not in a congregation with them, you already know that you feel a certain way about that leadership, don't you? Find leadership that you can trust and have faith and believe that Abba put them in that position. By the way, that doesn't mean you're going to love them in terms of their personality. Oh, they may rub you the wrong way. It's not about personality, it's about role. Are they the person that you're supposed to be learning from and being guided by? Because trust me, I know my personality doesn't rub everybody the right way. But you know what? Those who get past that, they get what they need. Okay? Okay? And it's not because of me. It's because Abba blesses there using the structure correctly. Abba blesses the process. That's why we'll call this the process going forward. He's blessing the process. It's not that you have to find a leader that has all the answers and is right about everything. He will bless you for doing the process right, as long as you vetted the leadership the best you could. Okay? So it's not just a process you can apply to any leader and say, well, I went to the leadership and did the process. Yeah, but you already knew that leadership was wrong and still halfway in, Christianity, wherever they were and everything else. So you know that's already the wrong leadership. Vet your leadership. Okay? Find yourself somebody that you need to be under. And then hopefully that somebody is part of a structure. So it's not just a one-man cultic show. We have a big structure here at MTOI. We have over 20-something leaders come to the leadership meetings when we have them once a month. Okay, it's big security and safety and council of numbers. But there's still structure in that group. It's not a kumbaya voting system. But there's an abundance of counsel. All right? But the burden of responsibility of decision still comes back to the leader, the one who's actually on that position, that role. Okay, Moses had a lot of guys working with him. Who made all the decisions? Moses. Okay? When things got brought to him. James made all the decisions, didn't he, when things got brought to him in Jerusalem. There was a lot of other guys here. Look, there's 11 other guys. But James is making the decisions. But he's listening. Do you notice he listened to everybody first? That's one of the things you want to know about your leadership. Do they listen to everybody first? You can ask the people about how the decisions are made in MTOI. Everybody gets to say their piece first. Matter of fact, I won't tell them sometimes what I'm already planning to do or thinking or leaning towards doing. Excuse me. Because I don't want that to influence them. I don't want them to be influenced in their input because they already know where I want to go or what I'm leaning towards. And this way I also don't have to change my mind in front of everybody because I might like something better that I hear and it makes more sense and the Ruach may confirm that for me and I may go in that direction and so it saves that problem.
All right, I don't know if this is on topic today, but Tim Barnes wants to know, how do I separate the voices in my head from God's voice?
Leadership structure. You need someone to help you sort through it, and then through doing that over time, you'll learn how to do it. In other words, really, it's lining it up with the Word, but if you're new, you don't read the Word right. So you can't just line it up with the Word. So how do you do that? You're hearing something, you think it's leading you in a direction, so then you go to your discipler, your leadership structure, and say, this is what I'm feeling I'm being told to do. Help me with this. Does that sound right to you? Does that, etc.? Okay? That's where structure comes and helps you. So it's not really off topic. It's actually the most recent part of what I was saying, so that's good.
All right. Doris Olson's question is, how does a wife in an uneven yoke not usurp her husband and follow Torah?
Okay, so that needs counsel. So that's something that, Doris, you could talk to me about. But basically, you have to understand that, number one, all marriages, all are unique. All right? So that's kind of weird to use the word all and then unique. All right? But all marriages are unique. So I can't give a simple, broad stroke that fits everything. However, what you have to understand is that you'll have to make some decisions about how you observe what you do because you are under a greater authority and you're also under your husband. So how do you respect your husband? So it's not necessarily a usurping. If your husband says, come with me to Sunday church and keep Christmas and everything, that's something you have to respectfully decline to do. But that's not usurping because you're not doing what he said. So there's going to be a way to handle that you have to do it as gently but firm and respectful, saying, remember, it's like honoring mother and father or respecting mother and father. Some of you are adults with adult parents, and they're driving you crazy, and they will say to you, well, if you don't listen to me, you're not honoring me. No. It has nothing to do with listening to you. It has to do with how I treat you when I listen or don't listen. I have to do it respectfully. I can respectfully say, no. Or I can say, what are you kidding me? What's wrong with you? Blah, blah, blah. That's very disrespectful. So you can respectfully say no. So it's not a usurping. Usurping would be if you started to step into his role and started telling him what he had to do and make him do things. That's a usurping. We see a lot of that with the ladies too. Be careful about usurping. But just because you don't want to do what he wants you to do because it's against Torah, that's where you have to find a way to respectfully decline and do what you need to do. If that doesn't work and it becomes a not workable situation, you'll have to decide if Abba's trying to say, this is just not going to work. Not everybody has what Billie Jean has, where her husband's been very respectful of her and allowing her to do these things without too much hassle. Some people are never going to get there, and those marriages are probably not going to make it. I'm not here to say which is which. You have to make your choice. But you have to put Torah observance above everything. It says you must love less by comparison. That includes husbands, wives, children, everything. Remember what it said there in family? We read that. Okay, you must put them second. And that's when you have to very gently, kindly, meekly, lovingly say, I know this is what you want. I understand this is how you feel. But I have to walk out my own salvation in fear and trembling. I have to keep Shabbat. I have to not eat pork and whatever else it is. This is the thing, okay? And that may cause people to split and lose. We don't want that. Nobody wants that. So that's why individually you'd have to counsel. Because I don't know how he's acting towards you right this minute and what the issue is that you think may be considered usurping. Billie Jean has a lot of stories she could share. No, but here's the thing, though. Listen, this is important. I'm really glad this was brought up because now it gives me this point I can make. Just because someone accuses or labels something doesn't mean it is. Well, if they say what you just did was unloving, that's the way they felt about it, doesn't mean it was unloving. If they said something was disrespectful, it doesn't mean it was disrespectful. It might have been. Just because the other person labels it doesn't make it so. I have a lot of you counsel me and say, well, you know, my husband, my wife, my parents, my mother, my whatever said this, and this, and said I did. Well, that's not true just because they said it. Or your Christian friends that are all telling you you're going to hell and this and that and you're not in the faith and blah, blah, blah. Well, just because they say it doesn't make it true. You don't have to own it. You don't have to receive it. You have to receive this stuff at Sinai in the upper room. You don't have to receive it just because they put a label on it and threw it at you and put you under the label. Okay, stop letting people do that to you. And don't do it to other people. All right? Don't do that. But that's the thing, is that you could have a husband, like Doris was saying, who could say, you're usurping. Why? Because I told you to come with me to church and you didn't come. That's not a usurping situation. She's not submitting to him. He wants you to go, she doesn't want to go. But she can also say, I know I'm not submitting to you because I'm trying to submit to him. Okay, so I used to use this image. I got to remember how I used to use it with the umbrella. Okay, so you're in the rain. Okay, you're in the rain. And Abba is the umbrella. Okay, we got an umbrella, so you're dry. You follow him, you do what he says, you're dry. And as long as your husband is allowing you to stay under the umbrella, you follow and do everything properly in that relationship. Okay? If you're starting to get wet following your husband, you got a problem. So you got to figure that out. Following Abba, you're dry. You can have both. Ideally, that's the way it's supposed to be. You should be following him, and he should be under the Father, and everybody's vertically set. When everybody's vertically set, everybody stays dry. Okay? But when the leadership is going to pull you in the left or right and off the path, you're going to start to get wet. So, as long as you're dry, submit to your husband the best you can, enjoy that relationship, stay in your roles, etc. But if all of a sudden the decision is going to cause you to get soaking wet, that's when you have to find a way to respectfully say, I'm not wanting to get wet here. Okay? I need to stay under the covering. And learning how to do that is what you get, that's what you call me. You call your covering, you call your leadership, and ask for counsel. Does that answer good, everybody, on that one? All right, go ahead, Kurt.
All right, Stephen Waffle's question. Should we be concerned with perfection in our steps forward, and how much allowances are given moving forward?
Say it one more time.
Should we be concerned with perfection in our steps moving forward, and how much allowances are given moving forward?
The word was perfection in there? What was that word? Okay.
Yeah, perfection.
Okay. You want to do with all your might. We do not have an expectation of perfection. Our goal is perfection. In other words, that's what we're striving towards, right? Strive to enter through the narrow gate. We talked about that in the teaching yesterday, which is Are You Saved, Part 7, right? But the idea here is Deuteronomy 8:2, okay? Let me just read that to you just so we have, see that, Bob? I'm reading a verse. Okay. Of course, I could just quote it, but we're going to read it anyway. Just so I can say we turned to a verse and read it. All right, look. It says, because this kind of works into this teaching. He said, look, verse 1, he says, guard to do every command which I command you today so that you might live. That's the whole point. And increase and go in and shall possess the land. And he says, look, and you're going to remember the journey you were on, that Yahweh led you all these 40 years in the wilderness to humble you, to prove, to know what is in your heart, whether you will guard his commands or not. That's the process. You're walking through a wilderness. In the process, you're going to be humbled. And if you're not going to finish this process right. And then you're going to demonstrate that your heart has the integrity to want to keep the commandments. Now, you are not going to do it perfectly, but you have to demonstrate that you want to. In other words, that when you fall short, you're disappointed, and you repent full-heartedly, and you get yourself back up and get back on the path, and you strive again to be perfect. But the expectation is not that you'll ever get there, but that you're going to put in the effort. That's the process. And that process includes the idea of teshuvah, turning around and getting back on the path, which includes repentance. All those teachings that are connected to this, forgiveness, all of these things are connected to the process. Okay? So going forward, you're simply looking to try to put one step in front of the other, keep moving forward, keep transforming into his image. You'll take a few steps backwards, a few steps sideways, get back on the path and get back forward. All right, Steve? Hopefully that answers Waffle's question. Okay, what else?
Okay, this is from Leanne. It's a two-part question. First one is, why does the emphasis on Shavuot seem to be on the law, instead of on the making of the first covenant and the Torah as the terms of that covenant? Then part two, similarly, would the upper room Pentecost event be the fulfillment of the making of the renewed covenant, with the Ruach being given and received as Messiah promised prior to his crucifixion?
Okay. I'm not really sure I understand the first question. I understand the second one. So I'm not sure what she meant by the Sinai. Why is it about Torah and not about covenant? Well, Torah was the covenant. Okay, the whole covenant was that this is what you're going to do. The covenant was you're going to do what I say, and this is what he said. He said keep Torah. So the whole Shavuot event is to celebrate the covenant. Now, I chose to talk about it from the point of view of what their attitudes and thought processes and what things would have been sitting there at that moment, coming into covenant. Now, when they covenanted, we could have covered that real quickly and saying they were just excited to go ahead and go forward with something, even though they were afraid they didn't know what it was going to look like, because after all, they just gone through this unbelievable experience. So we're like, yeah, whatever he says, we'll do it, you know. I mean, what else are you going to say at that moment? But it wasn't necessarily coming out of their heart, out of their desire. They were probably scared, you know what-less, okay? I mean, they were just, I'm just being serious. I mean, after all, they just saw what he just did to Pharaoh and the army and everything. And what he did to Egypt with the plagues. And they still see the fire and the cloud and all those things. They were scared. They were like, yeah, whatever he says, we'll do it. All right? Now, of course, a lot of us are that way. It's almost like the altar call. Think of that as like the first ever altar call. They got hyped up, they got up there, and probably had no idea what they were really committing to. I mean, really, think about it. Not that there's supposed to be an altar call, I'm saying, but that was kind of the same emotional set there. Somebody got all stirred up, thought it was the right thing to do, thought they were supposed to do it, and had no idea what they just did. Anybody know what I'm talking about with the altar calls and how people get all hyped up and do these things? And they have no idea. And how do I know that? Because I was at a concert. This was a Christian singing, contemporary Christian concert, where they said, all the youth leaders come into the back of the stage here. And it was in the middle of the concert. They took a break. And so I went back there. I wasn't a youth leader. My wife said, where are you going? I said, I want to know what they're doing. She goes, but you're not a youth leader. I'm like, so what? And I just went anyway. So I went in the back. And they said, we're about to do an altar call, and most of these kids, because we were the oldest people there in our 30s, and there were all these kids there, and they said, most of these kids are going to have no idea what they just did. So we're going to, after they do, we're going to steer them in your direction in the corners of the room, and then you can take them and cultify them and indoctrinate them, whatever else was expected to be done. Okay? But they admitted right there that these people were going to do something that they had no idea what it was they were doing. And I wanted to go, excuse me, then what's the point? What is the point to get them to do something they have no idea what it is? In terms of the ramifications and understanding what it was they just made a commitment to or whatever they were doing. It was insanity. Of course, I scared my wife because I came back, told her what was going on, and then she saw me there with my head down. She goes, what's going on? I go, I got to stop this. She goes, she's praying, please let him not do anything. Because I was going to stand up and say, this has got to stop. And we got arrested and thrown out and the whole thing. So, you know. So I didn't say anything. I was sitting there pretty much crying, though. I was really sad. I was just like, these, you know, this is one of those things where we hadn't fully come out of her, my people. We used to like some of these bands. We no longer listen to that kind of music anymore. There was a big concert in town. Julie asked me to go. I thought, hey, okay, we'll go one last time. Hated almost all of it. Even though we knew the songs and stuff, it was all the J name and everything else going on. We just didn't know what we were doing there. Because we'd already come out of all that. But it was there so I could see that event. It was there for me to see this whole altar call thing. And that was a big emotional moment for me. And I really almost stood up and had a Jeremiah moment and said, hey, you're offering these children to Molech. I really did. I almost got up to do that. But the Ruach said, no, just sit down. It's not time for that now. Okay? But learn the lesson, never do this again, which we never did. Okay? That was many, 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 many years ago. But just so you understand, I know that they know that these people don't know what they're doing. I know that probably at Sinai was the same thing. They did, because they didn't know what he hadn't said anything yet. They're just agreeing in advance to do everything he said. He hadn't said anything yet. So they had no idea what they were getting into. What they did know, hopefully, is who they were getting into it with. Okay? That's the key. The second part of the question had to do with the renewed covenant being what took place in Acts chapter 2. Absolutely not, and I'll explain why. Go to Jeremiah 31. There you go, Bob, more verses. Jeremiah 31. For those of you who are listening or online and everything, Bob's my best friend, so I'm just teasing him. It's okay. He knows where it's coming from. All right. Jeremiah 31 and verse 33. No, 31. We'll start there. See, the days are coming, declares Yahweh, when I shall make a new or renewed covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. Okay, first of all, this says nothing about Gentiles or Christians. So you can't be a renewed covenant Christian church and claim this. Okay? Because they all claim it comes back to Jeremiah 31, and that says it's going to be with Israel and Judah. Now listen, he goes, not like the covenant I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, out of Mitzrayim, my covenant which they broke. Yahweh didn't break anything, but my covenant which they broke, though I was a husband to them, declares Yahweh. For this is the covenant I shall make with the house of Israel after those days, declares Yahweh. I shall put my Torah in their inward parts and write it on their hearts, and I shall be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. Well, there you go. Acts chapter 2 fulfilled. Whoa, wait, there's more verses. And no longer shall they teach each one his neighbor and each one his brother, saying, know Yahweh, for they shall all know me from the least of them to the greatest of them, declares Yahweh, for I shall forgive their crookedness and remember their sin no more. Has that happened yet? No. Okay? So you can't stop in the middle of a little speech here. This little message here doesn't stop at verse 33. He's not finished talking. He's still continuing. It's not like he even pauses. He's just continuing. Now, bear in mind, there's another piece here, too, in verse 33. He no longer mentions Yehuda because at this point, the two sticks have come back together. So we're still not talking about Acts chapter 2. The two sticks have not come back together in Acts chapter 2. We're still dealing just with Yehuda, with Judah. Okay? So he says, for this is a covenant I shall make with the house of Israel after those days. Why? Because we know that Scripture is here a little, there a little, line upon line, precept upon precept. So we know about Ezekiel 37. And so when those two sticks come together, now we just call them Yisrael. The previous covenant was with what became Judah and Israel. The two houses split from that of the one. See, we believe in the two houses, but not believing they're supposed to be. We believe that they exist and they're supposed to be put back together. All right? So we don't believe in, see, a lot of the two-house people out there believe there's supposed to be two houses, and sort of the Jews stay the Jews and the Gentiles stay the Gentiles, and somehow that's your two houses. No, Judah's one and Israel's one. Or Judah and Ephraim, for Ephraim's often called for Israel. That's your two sticks. Now, you are part of the companions if you're not part of Judah or Israel by birth. Because in the two sticks it says, and their companions. Those that would join and graft into the groups. But verse 33 tells us the covenant that's going to be made is not going to be a two-house covenant. It's going to be a one-house covenant. Okay? And so they're going to be back to one. Now, the original covenant, by the way, was made with what? One. They split later under Solomon, going forward after he died and his children, right? We had the split. Okay, so you have Jeroboam and Rehoboam. So then we have the split. And then, of course, we know when that split, Yahweh says, don't go try to fix this. This split is of me. It serves my purposes. Okay? That's part of the identity teaching. So go look on Discovering Your Identity, and it's a multi-part teaching that'll help you with that. I don't know, 6, 7 parts. Okay? So hopefully that answers the question that Acts chapter 2 was not the fulfillment of Jeremiah 31.
If you're new, can we partake in Shavuot benefits, or are we just observing? What makes me able to be a part of this?
Okay. In Scripture, first of all, go listen to, when you get a chance, the Appointed Times teaching as part of the CC 101 series, the Appointed Times of Yahweh. But understand that everyone can come and celebrate and observe and learn at any of the feasts except Passover. They can for unleavened bread, Shavuot, trumpets, atonement, Sukkot, Shemitah, etc., etc. But Passover, that meal, that one event, is only for those that are already ready to commit. They've already made the commitment. And so if you're new, you can come to Sabbath, you can come to feast, you can come to everything and observe and learn. And then taste of it and decide, hey, maybe this is for me. We call you a ger. That's G-E-R in the transliteration, or, as we try to put it. And the ger would be the proselyte, the one who's saying, this might be where I'm supposed to be. I'm going to check this out. Now, while checking it out, you're expected to behave just like those that are already in. So you're expected to behave appropriately if you're at a Sabbath, if you're at a feast, if you're doing these things, okay? And that's all in verses that we have as part of those teachings where it's expected that there's one law for both. All right? Anything else?
All right. S. Egan asks, I understand how we get complacent in our blessings, but earlier you said we can get complacent in our suffering. Please give me an example. I can't quite grasp it.
Okay. And actually, my brain just went to something else for the previous point I want to make before we go on to this one. All right? Everybody is welcome when you're new. But here's what I want you to do when you're new. Don't forget that you're new. So what should a new person do? Listen and be quiet. We get new people come in, and right away they want to start talking. They don't know what they don't know. So be careful with that. You need to be quiet till you start to realize how much. Some of you have been doing this 3, 4, 5 years, and you're only starting now to realize what you don't know. Because there's layers and layers of what you don't know, right? And so if you're new, mouth closed, ears and eyes open. Only open it to ask questions. Don't be answering people's questions and putting input and sharing and teaching and instructing when you're new. Because you don't know yet what you don't know. You know a whole bunch of things you think you know, only you're going to find out later some of that is completely upside down and backwards because you didn't know. And it's going to be often in areas that you were absolutely sure you knew, and you still were wrong. So just be careful with that. Okay, go back to the question now about complacency and suffering. Okay, I understand the question. You don't have to go back to it. All right, the point being this. I know that we can get complacent when things are good, and we get comfortable, okay? But when we're suffering, we can also get comfortable in our suffering because the alternative is more, in our minds, painful potentially to step out of that and potentially do something different. What if it's worse? I've been doing this suffering thing for so long. It's suffering, but I'm used to it. I've already got to a place where I'm handling it okay. It's not, see, that's why Abba says, if you don't listen, I'm going to punish you 7 times. And if you still don't listen, I'm going to turn that up even harder, punish you another 7 times. In In other words, keep increasing the pain level until you finally decide enough is enough. I'm going to go do this thing right. So if the pain level is not high enough and you're in a pattern of suffering and existing with that level of pain for a period of time, you could get comfortable in that pain. Okay? Does that answer the question? Probably. Okay. So, I mean, just understand that the worst thing that can happen to you is that you get comfortable. Okay? Striving, like he told us to do in the verse that we read in Luke, when he says, strive to enter through the narrow gate. Striving is not something that happens when you're sitting back comfortable. All right? If you're striving to get your finances right, your finances will get right. If you're comfortable enough where at the level of suffering you're doing financially, you're never going to get it right. There's not enough pain yet. Sometimes people say, I don't know why. Because the pain level has to keep going up until you get up and do something. So stop whining about it. If the level's finally high enough, do something about it. But I'm going to sit there and cry and whine about it. All right, well, not bothering me. It's your pain. I'll give you some guidance. Do it or don't do it. But then what happens is they come to me, they're still whining 6 months later. Did you do what I asked you to do? Nope. Why not? All right, well, you're not enough pain yet. Go suffer some more. You don't want to counsel with me, I know. Wow, is that what he says when he counsels? I don't treat people that way. Actually, I do sometimes. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm getting it from here. Yeah, you do. However, watch the head nod too. But did you deserve it? And was it what you needed? Okay, see, so just so you know. Okay? Because at some point you need someone to say, knock it off, stop it. Okay? Just stop it. Okay? Somebody has to do that to you and say, enough. Why are you asking me for help if you're not going to do it? Okay? If I give you guidance, it's because I have already, in my mind, taken on full responsibility for the actions and results of that decision. And so I took it seriously to give you the counsel. Now, if you're not going to take the counsel, why are you wasting my time? I don't do opinion polls. People will call me up. Well, Rabbi, this is the situation. What do you think? I don't want to tell you what I think. I'll tell you what I think you should do. Or I'll help you figure out what you need to do. Most of the time, by the way, it's not me telling you what to do. It's me trying to help you see what you now know and you probably already knew you needed to do. So sometimes it's me just going, come on, you know what to do. You just don't want to do it. This isn't rocket science. I mean, it's not like you need to have an advanced degree in Torah to understand, that when your boss says come in Saturday, you don't go. I mean, but some people still struggle. That's something that's going on in here and in their heart, their head and their heart. So we need to end with that. Okay. 1, 2, 3. All right. Shavuot Tov. Have a good week. All right. Blessings. We love you guys.